up. I know we're all familiar with Collegetown Class, but I want to set a little bit of context for, I don't know, history, prosperity's sake. This is the first part of a two-part finale of the Collegetown Class series. We are wrapping up our 2020 semester with the first ever installation of Collegetown Class, the Civic Leadership Alumni Skillshare. So throughout the semester, we've been able to host a variety of workshops from 30, 45, 60 minutes, all hosted by different facilitators on a variety of topics. And today it is very exciting to be able to wrap up not only the semester, but this crazy year that we have all been living through. So I'm so excited to do that. And as people continue to join us, I will let them in from the wait room. We will, once I pass the virtual mic over to KB, our wonderful facilitator, we will all remain on mute. Thank you all for already being muted, but as we all know in this work from home world, the background soundtrack is often unwelcome. So unless KB invites us all to, chime in, hi Anna, let's all remain on mute so the focus can be on her audio and her sound and whatever she wants us listening to. And then the chat is open and available. Feel free to keep your videos on. We love that face-to-face engagement that we can create in this crazy Zoom world. We can pretend that we're all in the same cozy space, journaling together. And as mentioned in the reminder emails, this is being recorded, and that is for the Collegetown YouTube channel, which our wonderful intern Anna has been uploading all of our classes to YouTube. Shout out to Anna. So the channel is popping. So this will live on after today. So folks can either revisit the prompts after this hour session we have, or tune in asynchronously if today didn't work with their schedule. So those are all my housekeeping notes. And without further ado, I'm so excited to pass the Zoom spotlight over to today's journaling extraordinaire, reflection queen, Kirsten Brinlee, also executive director of Collegetown, but first and foremost, reflection queen. Over to you, KB.
Yay! Thank you so much, Maddie, for that introduction. It is so great to see you all. I am going to share some slides and get us going on our reflection journey. So let me share my screen. Share. We are looking at some slides. All right. Y'all are seeing the slides? Excellent. 2020, end of year reflections. Woo-wee. Yikes. Wow. Whew. Where do we even start, y'all? There's so much to unpack with 2020, and there's space for all of it. So in putting together the questions that I wanted to facilitate with us today as we're journaling, I want to make space for the grief. I want to make space for the anxiety. I want to make space for the disappointment. I want to make space for the resilience. I want to make space for the growth, for the joy, for the moments that made us proud. Because it's all here, and it's in every year too, right? So it's interesting to live through a collective experience like 2020, right? Where we're all kind of going through a similar hard time. I'm sure that all of us have had years before 2020 where we may have had our own personal hardships or challenges, and that in itself can feel lonely. But also, like, there is loneliness in kind of going through this shared collective experience together and not having space to talk about it, which is why I really wanted to host this reflection session to talk about 2020, because it has been one wild year. A little bit about me. I love to see things grow. I do journal at the end of every year and throughout the year as well. Like Maddie mentioned, I do love journaling. And there's a couple of different ways that I have journaled the end of the year. One, I want to share these because I think they're helpful. One is to make a list. So just take out a blank sheet of paper and write down everything that you can remember from your previous year. You can do that in a lot of different ways. I usually just like a printer paper, pen, make a list. But I know that there are some folks in the call that have incredible doodling skills, Maddie, who do like a full-on spread of their year, including highlights. So I think that can be really helpful. It's helpful to do it from memory, so that you can kind of see like what's top of mind, but then, obviously go back through your calendar and kind of add stuff that you forget. Another resource that I've used for the last 4 or 5 years is a workbook called Unravel Your Year by Susanna Conway. It hasn't come out yet for this year, but we can link to it in the YouTube and in the class follow-up. This is a free workbook that's usually about 40 pages long, and it's very in-depth. So I usually work on it the week between Christmas and New Year's, and it's a really great resource to kind of process and make sense of the year that just happened, and then put together some dreams for the year ahead. Another suggestion on how to make sense of a year is to scroll through your photos. It's really helpful to kind of look back and see what you took pictures of and what you wanted to remember in the moment, and just making some reflections on that. And then letters. I think it can be really helpful I know there's like the kind of the time-honored tradition of like a Christmas message or like a Christmas letter that's wrapping up the year, that folks send to family and friends. But letter writing, I think, can be a really helpful way to process the year as well. Even if you don't send it to anyone, right? Maybe you put someone in mind that you're thinking about, and then write the letter, but maybe not send it. And then I really see reflection as part of the life cycle of all things. So there's, maybe we begin at rest, we create, we stumble through the early stages of creation, we find our footing, we continue to do the thing, and then we at some point come to a moment of reflection, and then we go back to rest. So really honoring the life cycle of all things and making space for reflection is really important. Why I reflect, I love this quote from Kierkegaard, that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. Again, reflection is making meaning of our lives. And I think the more we can understand what has happened, it can inform how we move forward and we live in the next moment, right? So I love this idea of like really taking the time to understand what got us to this point and where we go next. So really quickly, just pausing to set an intention for yourself of why you're here, what you're hoping to find, and then knowing that this is the beginning of probably some journaling, some processing, and that we won't do it all, but there are hopefully some helpful tools or some helpful prompts for your journey ahead. So we'll just pause for a couple seconds. You can write down an intention in your journal or whatever you're using to take notes for the class today. Your intention is yours first and foremost, but if you'd like to share it in the chat, I think that could be helpful as well. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, but feel free to drop your intention in the chat. So gather your materials first. If you have a journal that you like to use, feel free to do that. You could also use loose paper for this. If If you have any collage materials, I did a collage journaling workshop at the beginning of the class series. So if you watched that one, feel free to grab all of your collage materials as well. And then have out your planner or calendar too, just as a reference point. So, if you have, if you use a Google Calendar or electronic calendar, maybe open up that tab so that you can kind of flip back and forth. Or if you use your phone or an old school like date book like I do, have that out. And pens. I also have my trusty cup of pens. So have some pens out. Also get comfy and cozy, find a spot where you can spread out, set up blankets, pillows, snuggies, slippers, all the things, get comfortable. If you have a favorite beverage, I've got some tea next to me, have that. Music, I did put together an accompanying playlist that I think Maddie's gonna put in the chat. It's called By 2020. It is intended to be listened to not on shuffle. So you can also shuffle it too. Yeah, it's for you. So do what you need to do for it. And then also I don't have a fireplace, but I also really like the sounds of fireplaces, especially when I'm doing journaling. So if you want to pop open a YouTube video and just search for like fireplace sounds for a little ambiance, or if you have a fireplace, maybe cozy up next to it, or like great landscapes too are really nice. And then, candles, incense, oil diffuser, all of those things are encouraged to make your space cozy. Getting all of the cozy in all the senses. So for the first journaling prompt, hopefully you are in your cozy space, is what even happened this year? So I am going to journal this one on a blank sheet of paper. And I'm going to make probably like a column and then 6 little grids, one for each month. If monthly sounds too much, you could do seasons, so winter, spring, summer, fall. And just we'll pause. I won't talk the whole time during this, so that you have some time to kind of write and listen to music and do your thing. But explaining this first prompt is, again, kind of just trying to remember the things that happened. So these can be things that happened in your personal life. These can be things that happened in the world. I know that time has not felt linear at all this year. So just putting in some anchors to make sense of time, I think could be really helpful before we dig into some of the questions around like how we're feeling and what we're processing. So again, maybe in your journal, you make a space for each month or each season and just write down some things that happened. So again, you can fill in the gaps. It's okay if it's hard to remember, especially like big chunks of time where maybe anxiety was front and center during the year. So it is okay if it's hard for you to remember like what even happened in the month of June, right? So I'll pause myself from talking and give you all some space to journal about the stuff that happened. I know you're all still working because heads are down and you're focused. If you haven't done so already, check out your lost months in your planner or your phone. So for me, April, whew, what happened? I gotta look back, right? That was a month that I still can't think of anything. So if you have any lost months, if you're still working, like now's the time to kind of check your photo reel, check your planner for filling in some of the gaps in the lost months. All right. So you may still be working on this part, and that's fine. But we're going to move on to some of the other questions. I think, again, I mentioned that April was a month for me that I just didn't have memories from, like already off the top of my head. And I looked back at my planner, and it's basically the month of canceled plans, right? So I like looked at the month page, and it's just blue scribbles everywhere. And so I think, that makes sense, right? That my brain wouldn't remember much, because it seemed like all that month I was rescheduling things, kind of getting things kind of relearning how to live in the new COVID world. But maybe just, like hold on to this, set it aside, and really start to, like, we're in the year now, we're thinking about it. Maybe you've got some months in your mind that you have words for, right? Like April, the month of canceled plans for me. And I think that that's, again, just helpful framing. Again, what even happened this year? How do we frame it? So now that we're in the year, we're thinking about what's happened, looking back on the last 12 months, think about these 4 questions, and you can journal however makes the most sense for you. So maybe just a couple sentences on each prompt. So what has disappointed you this year? What has surprised you? What has made you proud? And what are the things that have sustained you? So again, maybe sentences, maybe some bulleted lists, but really thinking about kind of these 4 questions, looking at the year as a whole. And again, I'll put myself on mute, give you all a few minutes to jot some notes down around these 4 questions. So again, you may not be finished with these prompts, but leave some space and you can always come back to them, right? So these questions, we will send them out afterwards. But again, kind of thinking through like what's kept me going, what's made me proud, what has been surprising, and what has been disappointing. Moving forward, we are about halfway through the journal questions. So just quick checking in. Hi, Marcus. Great to have you here. Again, we're about halfway through the journal questions. Maybe drop in the chat some things that are coming up for you, some things that you're thinking about as we're moving through these. The next set of questions is a check-in with our body, our mind, our heart, and our sense of purpose, our sense of creativity, our drive maybe. So at the end of this year, how are you feeling in your body? How are you feeling in your mind? How are you feeling in your heart? And how are you feeling in your sense of purpose? And again, structure your page that in a way that makes sense to you. So maybe you have 4 boxes for those 4 areas. Or if you're just, kind of working through like a traditional kind of journaling, working through the page. So a check-in on kind of how you're feeling at the end of this year in those 4 areas. And then once you do that, go back and ask yourself what you need to prepare for a new year. So I like to think of this question as like the diagnose and prescribe, right? So where are we at? What's going on in those areas? And then what could be a potential solution, a thing that you add, maybe a thing that you take away in order to kind of recalibrate for those 4 areas of our lives. And give yourself some time for the recalibration. So, it's only December 9th, so we still have 3 more weeks before we get a new year. And even then, I like to think of January as a full gear up month. So there's time to do this recalibration, but diagnose and prescribe for yourself on how you're feeling in body, mind, heart, sense of purpose.
I know you're not finished, but we're going to move on to the last question. And we have about 10 minutes left, so we won't finish that one either. So my suggestion is that you find another hour today, tomorrow, Friday, maybe over the weekend to come back to all of this work because it's really important. So the last thing that I want to leave you with is making 2 lists. So what stays in 2020, and then what comes with you into 2021. So again, things that we're leaving behind, that we no longer need, things that can stay put in 2020. Make that list. And I would suggest writing this on a piece of paper that you can either rip out or a loose piece of paper, and then writing what comes with you into 2021. So maybe looking back at that list of things that surprised you or made you proud. What are some of the moments that you've had this year where you felt strong and resilient? Maybe how do we take those with us into 2021? So work on these 2 lists, and then I'll come back in about 5 minutes and tell you what I want you to do with the list. All right. So I know that you're still working on your lists. Once you feel like you've gotten your list finished, and again, that's probably not going to be today, but once you do feel like you have a list that feels complete, I would encourage you to take the list of what stays in 2020. If you want to remember this list and check back with yourself, maybe take a picture of it, or schedule a calendar invite for a couple months from now to remind yourself of what you wrote down, of what you no longer want in this new year, this new 2021. But I think it's really helpful to take that list and to burn it. So I would encourage you to, if you want to remember, to keep yourself accountable. I think that's a good idea, but I also think it's really helpful to burn this list as well. If you live in an apartment like I do and you don't have a fireplace, you can always put it in a bowl and burn it, maybe in your bathroom where you can turn on that exhaust fan, open a window, and flush it down the toilet. Or if you have a fire pit or a fireplace, you can throw it in there. For the list of what comes with you in 2021, put that in a place where you'll see it in January for sure. Maybe you keep it out all December and you add things to it. And I would do the same thing of putting a calendar reminder or a note in your planner to revisit that list wherever you've written it down. So with that, I would love to see in the chat a one-word check-in on what this journaling experience was like for you. We are coming up on our last couple minutes together, so just wanting to be respectful and mindful of your time, but would love to hear how you're feeling. So a one word or one phrase check-in on what this experience was like for you, how you're feeling, what you're noticing, anything that's coming up. Reconnected, energized. I love it. Love to see it. Yeah. And I just thank you all so much for being with us for this last one. Therapeutic, concluded, completed. I love these check-ins. These are great. I am feeling all of those things too. I'm really just mostly feeling grateful that you all trusted me to facilitate and lead you through these questions, that you decided to show up and come to this class today, to listen to the class if you're watching a little bit later. And I hope that these questions are a helpful guide as you continue this month of reflection and gearing up for reconnecting to your goals and priorities in the new year. This is how you can stay in touch with me. I always welcome emails and check-ins on all the social medias. You also, a lot of you have my phone number, so feel free to send me a text. And I just appreciate you all so much. And with that, I will turn it back over to Maddie. And thank you all so much.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks so much, KB. Really appreciate it. December is reflection time with a capital R. So always appreciate the prompts because so often it's intimidating to look at that blank page and think, where do I start, especially in a year like 2020. So I think I speak for the group when I say so appreciate the exercises and the resources to revisit. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this class, the session will be offered on our YouTube channel. So you feel free to revisit it. Like KB said, the whole month of December is reflection time and basically all of January as well. Looking forward into spring 2021, we are going to continue the class series. So I welcome you, if at all interested, to host your own session. Very flexible on duration, as in 30 to 60 minutes and time of day, etc., as well as subject matter. And I look forward to your feedback in the post-class survey, which will be sent out tomorrow, in addition to KB's slides and the soundtrack. So survey, slides, songs, soundtrack, all of the S's will be sent out tomorrow. Keep an eye out in your inbox for that. And with that, I will wrap up this class. We are right at 1 o'clock. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you all soon. Talk to you soon.